put this on record. Okay. So the last topic that we've discussed is what? I think disaster as the consequence of natural hazards. Now we are going to talk about the anatomy of disaster, evolution, and risk analysis. So madungog man ko ninyong tarong, no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes,
very
ma'am.
good. Okay, very good. Now, in evolution into a disaster, emergency versus disaster versus crisis. So ano ba ang pagkakaiba nilang tatlo? Okay, so when you say emergency, unforeseen or sudden occurrence, especially danger demanding immediate action, that is according to Republic Act number 10-12-1. An unplanned event with the capacity to endanger life, disrupt operations, cause environmental damage, and affect reputation, and which requires a significant and comprehensive response. This is according to Talbot and Jakeman, 2009. Okay? So meaning, when you say emergency, when you say unforeseen, hindi nakikita, hindi ini-expect, hindi ina-anticipate, right? Even if you are expecting that something will happen, you cannot see or you cannot foresee. When you see foresee, dili mo makita ba kung unsay mahitabo sa future sa nga what kind of panghitabo ang mahitabo, right? Even if you are saying that expect everything, expect the unexpected, diba? Expect the unexpected, so therefore expect everything na maraming mangyayari in the future. But yet you have no idea what will happen in the future. Like you are expecting anything, right? Magkamot may ba, bahala na, diba? But when you say emergency, it is unforeseen, hindi nakikita. Hindi mo ini-expect kasi hindi mo ini-expect na mangyayari ito ngayon, mangyayari bukas, diba? Mangyayari sa iyo, mangyayari sa kanya. Okay? Now it depends upon what kind of emergency. There are a lot of things na pwede nating tawaging emergency, hindi lang about disaster. For example, sa accident, di ba? It endangers life, right? It endangers life. Di ba? Lalo na kung vehicular accident yan. Tapos fatal yung injuries. Now, it is clearly that it endangers the life of the passenger and the driver of that vehicle. Aside from that, it disrupts the operation of the flow of the vehicles. Right? Magkaka-traffic. No, actually hindi traffic ang tawag dyan. Magkaka-congestion. Magkakaroon ng congestion sa traffic. When you say traffic, it is the natural flow of the vehicle from one place to another. Yan yung ibig sabihin ng traffic. The flow of the vehicle. Now, you cannot say that traffic kaayo. Of course, there's a traffic. Kasi there's a transportation. Diba? May nangyayaring pag-transport from one place to another using a vehicle. You must say that the traffic is so congested because there is a vehicular accident happen within the area. No, ganon. No, because of the vehicular accident, there's a disrupt of operations, no, sa natural flow sa vehicles. Right? Sometimes it causes environmental damage kapag ang pagkabangga niya is napunta pa siya or nasagi pa niya yung mga bagay. Just like for example, the trees, the posts, 'di ba? Yung guardhouse. Example, yung guardhouse or yung bahay na nasa gilid ng kalsada. Right? So that is emergency. When you say emergency, kailangan na aksyonan agad, or else it will severe the damage. It will severe the or it will complicate the situation. No? Na as time goes by, magiging komplikado ang situation kapag hindi ito bibigyan ng action agad-agad. That is emergency. A disaster is bound by a specific period in which lives and essential properties are immediately at risk, whereas an emergency can encompass a more general period in which there is a clear and marked deterioration in the coping abilities of a group or community. Or coping abilities are only sustained by unusual initiatives by the group or community or by external intervention. Sabi dito, according to UNDMTP 1992, the disaster is bound by a specific period. No, let's just say, when you say disaster, let's just say a typhoon, no? May bagyong dumating o pumasok dito sa Pilipinas. Now, kung ano yung madadaanan ng bagyo, kung sa tumaagian sa bagyo, of course, malunupan, magkakaroon ng baha, masisira yung mga tahanan, di ba? Magkaka-flash flood. That is what we call disaster. Diba? That is what we call disaster. Now, again, when you say emergency, it encompasses a more general period in which there is a clear and marked deterioration in the coping abilities of a group or community. Diba? For example, dahil sa disaster, dahil sa bagyo, nagkakaroon ng disaster, nagkakaroon ng flash flood, nagkaroon ng pagbaha, nagkaroon ng disruption of property, diba? Nasira yung mga buildings, nasira yung bahay, naanod ang mga balay. No? Because of that, pumasok si emergency. You need to act immediately. You need to give assistance in order for the community or for that specific place to cope up with the disaster. Ano ba ang mga specific at dapat gawin in times of emergency? Of course, given na yan na kapag may baha, magkakaroon ng mga rescue missions, right? Yung mga na-stranded sa kanilang mga bahay, nang dahil sa baha, hindi makalabas, no? Hindi makapunta sa evacuation center or evacuation area, i-rescue yan. Diba? Pwede nyo ba yan pwede ba ninyo na ingnon nga, unya na i-rescue? Nanaan ang baha. Diba? Dili pwede because you never know the movement of the water. You never know how gaano katibay yung bahay na pinapatungan nila. You never know what will happen to them if time passes. Pasagdaan lang ninyo siya. Diba? That is emergency. You need to act immediately. Diba? In order for these victims, these typhoon victims to cope up with the situation. Okay? An emergency is a situation in which the community is capable of coping. See? When you say emergency, it is a situation in which the community as a whole, not just an individual, is capable of coping. Right? Because the methods or the actions that you are going to do under emergency or during emergency are the steps in order for the community or for the people to cope up with the situation. Para maka-cope up sila sa situation. Kukunin niyo sila dahil binaha yung bahay nila, ilalagay niyo sila sa evacuation area, bibigyan ng mga relief goods, bibigyan ng mga damit, bibigyan ng mga um, medicines, kung mayroon bang mga nagkakasakit or whatsoever, no? That mere action itself is what we call coping. Coping with the situation. Okay?
Ma'am,
Yes.
ang disaster, ma'am, natural lang na siya, ma'am.
Ang disaster is it could be man-made and it could be natural. When you say disaster, my good, it is the disruption of natural a movement or flow or set up the community or of the place. For example, ang natural na disaster is yung earthquake, yung typhoon, na wala namang kinalaman yung mga tao. That is a natural, made by nature. When you say man-made na disaster, ano bang man-made na disaster? Gera, di ba? Yan, ito yung pinaka-best na example sa man-made na disaster. Gera, di ba? Because there is also a disruption of the community. Di ba? Na ay mamatay, na ay mga bungkag na mga panibalay, nga mga building. Right? So, inana siya. Okay? It is a situation generated by the real or imminent occurrence of an event that requires immediate attention of emergency resources. A disaster is a situation in which the community is incapable of coping. Diba? When you say emergency, it is the situation na ang community is capable of coping. However, ang disaster naman is a situation where the community is incapable of coping. Why? Hindi na kasi maibabalik ng mga tao or ng mga community kung ano yung dating meron sa kanila. Just like for example, when it comes to natural disaster, di ba? When you say natural disaster, typhoon, flash flood, okay? Landslide because of the heavy rain. Natabunan yung bahay nila, yung eskwelahan nila, nabaha sila, diba, naanod ang ilahang balay. They are not capable of coping with it. Hindi na nila mababalik yung bahay nila. Hindi na nila mababalik kung ano yung meron sila before the disaster happened. Or let's just say, gera, man-made, or human disaster. Hindi na nila mababalik yung peacefulness ng community nila before the gera. Right? So disaster is the incapability of coping. Okay? It is a natural or human. See? Just like it answers the question of your classmate. Kung ang disaster ba is natural lang. No, again, it is a natural or human cause event which causes intense negative impacts on people, goods, services, and or the environment, exceeding the affected community's capability to respond. Therefore, the community seeks the assistance of government and international agencies. No? Best example is katong Typhoon Yolanda. That is one of the strongest and biggest typhoons na dumating dito sa Pilipinas, right? Now, in order for the community na nasalanta ng Yolanda, in order for the community to cope up with their losses, diba? Because during that typhoon, during that natural disaster, they cannot cope up because kusog kaayang hangin, malakas yung baha, malakas yung ulan, they cannot do anything about it. Diba? Now, after the disaster, emergency, pumasok na si emergency. Dito na makikita ko ano yung dapat na gawin based sa impact or sa result ng disaster. Assess the area, assess the community, how it greatly affects by the natural disaster. Ano yung mga nasira, ano yung kailangan nila ngayon, diba? what are their necessities. Matapos, after yan ma-assess, doon na lalapit sa government for assistance. Right? Government for the assistance. Di ba nakita ninyo yon na ang daming nag-abot ng tulong from different parts of the Philippines. Di ba? Ang daming nag-abot ng mga donations, even here in Davao City, even our 911. Pinapunta doon na Mayor Duterte that time sa lugar kung saan nasalanta ng bagyong Yolanda. No, even so, the Japan, the China also extends their help. No, it considers us international agencies. They even the UN, United Nations, they extend their help, no, in order for that community to cope up with their loss. Okay? A crisis naman tayo. A crisis, any event that can, within a short period of time, harm your institution's constituents, its facilities, its finances, or its reputation. Decisions are made to head off or mitigate the effects of such an event. Often while the event itself is unfolding, whereas an emergency is a situation generated by the real or imminent occurrence of an event that also requires immediate attention. So when you say crisis, no, it happened in a short period of time. It harms your institution's constituents, its facilities, its finances, or its reputation. Now, for example, i-relate natin dun sa bagyong Yolanda. Diba? Nang dahil sa bagyong Yolanda, nagkaroon ng baha, right? Nagkaroon ng pagsira ng mga business establishments. Nagkaroon ng pagguho ng mga buildings, ng simbahan, nasira yung mga kabahayan, right? Now, after that disaster, pumasok na si emergency. The government assistance, the international agencies assistance, right? Now, after assessing the loss of that community, pumasok dito si crisis. Nakita ng community na to na they are not capable of coping up if sila lang because of the major loss. Their facilities, no, the government of that community, the facilities, the financial stability of that community is not enough to give assistance and help cope up with their losses. Diba? Dila kaya. Gamay ra kailang kwarta because ang ilahang munisipyo apil gihapon sa na biktima sa bagyo. Ilang kapitolyo na biktima gyapon sa bagyo. Diba? So dito na pumasok si crisis. May crisis in terms of the facilities, no? May problema sa facilities. Yes?
Ang Marawi crisis, ma'am, ano ba na siya?
Yes, oo.
Appeal ba na siya sa example sa crisis, ma'am?
Pandemic, ma'am. Pwede po, ma'am, no?
Pandemic, yes. Yes. Ang crisis when it comes to pandemic is that we lack of medical facilities. Sa daghan kay natong mga patients na nag-COVID positive, kulang kay ato ang hospital facilities, kulang kay ato ang mga isolation facilities. Therefore, the Philippines is not ready for this pandemic. But because of the help and assistance coming from the government and coming from the international agencies, pareha ng the Russia, the US, diba? The China kung kinsa patong nagbuhat og mga vaccines na naghatag sa tua libre, tapos ang uban gipalit na sa atong government in order for us na mavaksinan ta, no? That is emergency. That is the situation na in order for the community or for the Philippines to cope up with the pandemic. Ang crisis is yung kakulangan ng community, kakulangan ng Pilipinas to cope up with the pandemic. Did you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Okay, very good. Diba? So mo na siya. Bisan lang gud ka ng kuan, kana ganing even in a small company, pag mayingon sila na sila financial crisis, no, it is not literally nga na ay problema sa ilang entire building or entire company. It is just that kulang ang ilahang kwarta to compensate to compensate all of their workers, to compensate the bills of their building sa company. So may mo announce sila nga na sila ay financial crisis because they are not capable of compensating the needs of their workers, their employees. Diba? Pero hindi ibig sabihin na nasalanta sila. No, it is just that kulang ang ilang fundings. Crisis ang tawagan. So let's go to hazard and vulnerability. Risk stands for R, is the probability that loss will occur as the result of an adverse event given the hazard and the vulnerability. That is risk. Same sa inyong gi-answer. Anyway, sa inyong gi-answer last time, may nag-answer na ang risk daw is the cease of moving. When you say cease of moving or to unsa to inyong term ito? Basta ang inyong kuan dito inyong ginamin sa definition is rest. Lahi ang rest, lahi ang risk. When you say rest, magpahulay. That is cease of moving. You are resting in order for you to para maka-recover imong lawas sa kakapoy sa imong trabaho. You are resting. R-E-S-T. Lahi po ning risk. When you say risk nga R-I-S-K is risking your life. No? Risk of being exposed to hazard, being exposed to danger that will make you vulnerable. No, lahi na siya, okay? Lahi ang rest, lahi ang risk, okay? Ang hazard naman stands for letter H, is the potential for a natural or human caused event to occur in the environment. Okay? Ang hazard is the potential for a human or for a natural or human. Diba? Human caused event. It could be a natural event or it could be man-made or human event. Vulnerability stands for letter V, is the extent to which a community's structure, services, or environment is likely to be damaged or disrupted by the impact of the hazard. When you say vulnerability, how vulnerable you are to the hazard. Diba? Unsa kadako ang tendency nga maapektuhan ka sa hazard. Diba? Mo na siya. When you say exposure is the number of people, property, systems, or other elements present in hazard zones that are thereby subject to potential losses. So for example, no, dito sa pandemic, when you say exposure, parang madungog man ninyo, 'di ba? Kanang sa mga bali-balita. The vulnerability, the hazard, the risk, and the exposure of the people against COVID-19 or Delta virus or Lambda virus, di ba? Daghan na kayo, mura na sila frat. When you say exposure, no, the number of people na na-expose with other people because dili sila mo subay sa protocol, health protocol. For example, mayingon nga, dili pwede mo gawas, bawal kang lumabas, unless if essential ang imong lakaw. Diba? Pero nigawas ka, no, kay na birthday, na dibu, diba? Tapos even if nag face mask ka, but still ni violate mo sa health protocol, daghan kayo mo, 100 plus po katao na nagsalo-salo dito. Tapos pagbalik nimo diri sa inyong balay, di ba? Nagdala na kag virus. Tapos it just so happen na ikaw ra di ay ang kaisa-isang tao nga nag-positive sa inyong barangay. Di ba? Tapos directly na-infect nimo ang imuhang natakdan nimo ang mga family members, tapos imong family members of course mopalit og mga suka di sa tindahan, makahalubilo niyang tendera, ang tendera po makahalubilo po yung lain tao. So, almost inyong barangay na infect nimo. That is the exposure. Diba? The number of people na na-expose sa virus. Okay? When you say vulnerability, the percentage of the people nga mag-positive. No, how high the possibility of these people, of the Filipino people nga mag-positive sa COVID-19. Di ba, madungog man ninyo. Narinig niyo na to. The vulnerability of the people, the wala pang vaccination, and the vulnerability of the people that are fully vaccinated na. Diba? They said that according to the statistics that the people that are fully vaccinated is much have higher rate of coping up with the virus. No, mas makakuan daw sila, mas maka-recover daw sila, and the symptoms of the virus ay ilang lawas is mild lang compared to the people na wala pa vaccines. So that is the vulnerability. Okay, that is the vulnerability. Ang risk naman na ibutang nato sa kuan sa pandemic. Ang risk naman is, will you risk your child for exposing sa virus because dili ka mo subay sa health protocol? That is risk. Kay nasabtan ba? Nasabtan ba? Mayan ka nga, risky ka ay bay. Risky ka ayo eh. Kabalo ka, kasabot ka unsang risky. It is just that you cannot choose the right words in order for you to describe the risk. But you understand what is risk, right? Now, ang coping capacity
Yes, ma'am.
naman, ang coping capacity naman is the ability of people, organization, and systems using available skills and resources to face and manage adverse conditions, emergencies, or disaster. No? What is the coping capacity of the Filipino people in times of pandemic or in this pandemic? No, they said that the statistics said that the coping capacity of the people who are fully vaccinated are much higher compared to the people na wala pa vaccination. No? Ay lang gihimo is they compare the coping capacity of the Filipino people last year compared now nga naanay vaccines. Diba? That is the coping capacity. Unsa kapaspas nga maka-recover ang Filipino people sa pandemic, sa COVID, sa virus. Okay? And the vulnerability, the degree of loss to a given element at risk or such of such elements resulting from the occurrence of a natural phenomenon of a given magnitude and expressed on a scale from 0 means no damage to 10 total loss. So that is the vulnerability, the degree of loss. Unsa kadako ang mawala. No, based sa risk nga giatubang. Diba? Unsa kadako ang chance nga mag-positive ang isa ka tao. Diba, kapar sa good ng vaccinated person, fully vaxxed person, and wala pa vax na person. di ba? Kapag ihalubilo daw nimo ni siya into crowd, the vulnerability of these two people is different. The vulnerability or the degree of or the chance of this fully vax person no nga magka COVID-19 is gamay lang. It could be 30% to 50%, but the symptoms are mild and they have a high chance of recovering in a short period of time. Compared naman sa wala pa'y vaccine nga tao, no? The vulnerability niya is very high because wala siya immune booster, wala siya immunity against the virus. So therefore, ang iyahang symptoms, it could be, no? It could be severe, lala kayo to the point nga mabutang siya sa medical facilities. Okay? That is the difference of the two people. Okay? Now, thank you for listening. So prepare for the application and activities. No? The paper will notify you when it is posted. Okay? So if you have any questions, we have less than 1 minute na lang. If you have any questions, please ask me sa GC nato doon sa Messenger. Not here, not sa Telegram. Okay? Kay matabunan ang ato